Welcome back to Bible Shorts, episode 58. Stand up and walk. Well, in last week's episode, we learned how Jesus had left Capernaum with some of his disciples to go to neighboring villages in Galilee to preach in their synagogues. And we learned that some of the religious authorities were starting to be uneasy about some of the things Jesus was saying and doing. Well, what were those things? Let's find out. So, today's story begins when Jesus returns to Capernaum after some days, and it was reported that he was at home. So many were gathered together that there was no longer room for them, not even about the door, and Jesus was preaching the word to them. And behold, 4 friends came along, carrying on a stretcher bed a man who was paralyzed, hoping to bring him to Jesus. And when they could not get near him because of the crowd, they removed the roof above him, and when they had made an opening, they let down the bed on which the paralyzed man lay. And when Jesus saw their faith, he said, "My son, your sins are forgiven." Notice, it was not just the man who was paralyzed that he was looking at with faith. He saw the faith of the man's friends as well. Now, some of the scribes and teachers of the law were sitting there, questioning in their hearts, "Why does this man speak like this? Who can forgive sins but God alone?" And Jesus, understanding what they were thinking, said, "Which is easier to say to this man, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Stand up, take up your bed and walk'? But that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins," he said to the man, "I say to you, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk home." And the man rose, immediately took up his bed, and walked out before them all. And they were all amazed and glorified God, saying, "We never saw anything like this." And yet, some of the scribes and Pharisees and teachers of the law didn't understand. They could not believe. They were so concerned, they thought, only God can forgive sins. Who is this man? Then, another time, Jesus was walking through the grain fields on the Sabbath with some of his disciples. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath." And Jesus replied, he says, "If you understood what I desire mercy, not sacrifice, which God says to us in our scriptures, you would not have complained about my disciples picking some grain as they walked. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." Going on from that place, he went into their synagogue. And a man with a shriveled hand was there. Looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus, they asked him, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" And Jesus said to them, "If any of you has one sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." But they were silent, and he looked around at them with anger, grieved at their hardness of heart, and said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." So the man stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored, just as sound as the other. But some of the Pharisees went out and plotted how they might destroy Jesus. But other Pharisees believed and understood, but they kept silent because they were afraid to speak out. Next week, look for Bible Shorts, episode 59, 5 loaves and 2 fish.